Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter. And I'd like to welcome to the show all the way down in Los Angeles, our wonderful co-host, Chris. How are you doing today, Chris?
Doing pretty good. Today feels like a momentous day because I'm finally meeting one of our infamous or famous guests who's a friend of yours.
Yeah, he's one of our gold jacket guests, although I haven't sent one of those out yet. And that's like a little kind of an old reference to Johnny Carson, where when you're a repeat guest, you eventually got that gold jacket and I need to get it out. But did you notice something different in the intro, Chris?
You said, welcome back to the DCL podcast to cruise a little smarter. You didn't say when the ships are sailing, which you've been saying for about 14 months. So I'm guessing something might be changing with Disney Cruise Line soon.
I think there is. And to talk about that today, why don't we pop over the Atlantic and welcome back to the show one of our good friends, our family's good friends. We were able to meet them on our second Disney cruise. Welcome back, John Towler. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks, Steve. And it's really nice to talk with you as well, Chris.
You too.
So, John, you've been on the podcast several times before, and I know that our longtime listeners have heard a lot of your great information that you've brought when you guys sailed to the Baltic. I mean, just so many. We used a lot of the information that your family experienced when we went on the Baltic as well. So I really appreciate everything you've brought to our show. But why don't you, for those who are newer listeners, kind of reacquaint everybody with who your family is and your kind of Disney cruising background?
Sure. Well, thanks for inviting me back on the show, Steve. First of all, I guess, as you said, I live across the Atlantic in England with my wife, and we have two boys. And we first cruised with Disney in 2016 when we went up to the Norwegian fields and met you guys. And then we've done 3 more cruises since then. In 2017, around the Baltic, which you mentioned. 2018, we went to the Mediterranean. And then in 2019, we ventured stateside and did one of the special itinerary 8-night cruises on the Fantasy down to the Caribbean. As you said, we've made shows together about each and every one of those cruises.
So kind of looking back in this past year with the, Disney Cruise Line and the cruising industry kind of grinding to a halt, I'm guessing that you probably had some cruises booked. How did that affect your family?
Yeah, we did. Like so many people in 2020, we were booked to go back to Norway to kind of revisit our first cruise. And then in 2021, we'd booked, I guess, what we consider to be a bucket list cruise. So that's an 11-night cruise up to Iceland. So really disappointed not to get on those. But hey, the world's had bigger issues to contend with than whether we can go on a ship or not.
Definitely.
So our topic for today is super exciting. We're here to talk about actually booking a real live cruise, even if it's a little different than a typical cruise. John, why don't you give us a lead into what that might be?
Sure, Chris, thanks. So DCL announced a little while ago that they were planning to offer some cruises in the summer of 2021, branded Disney Magic at Sea. These were to be staycation cruises, which means you depart from a port, sail around the sea somewhere, and then return to the same port. These cruises would be based out of ports in England and would be available to UK residents only.
That's interesting. I think a lot of folks in the US will know that if you're sailing out of a US port, it's not allowed to sail to nowhere. You have to stop somewhere internationally. So it seems like maybe one of the reasons Disney's gone this route in the UK is because the laws are slightly differently structured there. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. And there are other cruise lines that are doing exactly the same thing this summer. So P&O, for example, are offering a similar type of staycation cruise program. So yeah, I guess it's legally easier to put it together.
So sailing out of England, there's 4 different ports. I'm familiar with 2 of them. Could you talk about the ports, John, where they are and how easy are they to get to for like UK residents?
The whole schedule of what this is going to look like over the summer has been the goalposts have been moving a few times over the last few weeks. And I assume that's because Disney have been in conversations with the UK government about what was possible, what would be allowed and all of that sort of thing. So where they've settled with is that there's going to be 28 cruises in total. commencing 15th of July and then finishing with the final cruise sailing on the 1st of October. They're nearly all 2 and 3 nights, but they've managed to put together 3 sailings that are 4 night. That are going to be a 4-night sailing. They're all on the Magic, and as we all know, that's the ship that normally spends its summer in Europe anyway, and has actually spent most of the last 12 months in Europe. Mostly, it's been moored up in Dover, in the south east corner of England. So 4 ports that are going to be used, as you said, Steve. They're all in England, so nothing sailing out of Scotland or out of Wales or out of Ireland. We start off in Liverpool, which is in the northwest of England. We then move to Southampton, which is down on the south coast, sailing out of there in August, followed by Newcastle, which is up on the northeast coast, and then finishing up sailing out of Tilbury through the second half of September. So I guess Tilbury is probably one of the ports you're not familiar with. And Tilbury's, it's a commercial port, so lots of container ships and commercial ships will go in and out of there, but it's the port closest to London. It's on the River Thames. It's about 30 miles from the centre of London out to the east. So those are the 4 ports that Disney have decided to use.
So I've got just an understanding question. So normally the Magic sails out of Dover when they sail out of England, which is where we sailed on to go up to Norway. Why do you think that they picked those 4 ports? Is it just so that people that live in the different parts of England have a closer port to get to? Or is it just to allow people like you, hey, maybe I want to go to Liverpool and visit Liverpool for whatever reason and sail out of there versus London because we go to London all the time?
I mean, I guess they spread them around geographically for exactly that reason, to make them accessible to the maximum number of people. The interesting question, I guess, is why didn't they choose Dover? And the honest answer is I don't know why they didn't choose Dover. Maybe it's because the ships are sailing to nowhere, and Dover's the nearest point to France. It's the busiest shipping, one of the busiest shipping lanes in the whole world. So maybe if they're sailing to nowhere, they just wanted to steer clear of the busiest shipping lanes. I don't know. That's a complete guess. So why they didn't use Dover, I don't know. And I suppose Dover's tucked right in the southeast corner of England. It's not the most accessible place to get to.
And Dover's pretty small compared to like a city like Liverpool and Newcastle. So I think that like when we sailed out of San Diego, a big draw to our 3-day was to spend a day or 2 in San Diego and then get on the ship. And it made for kind of a longer vacation for Anawik and I when we went. So maybe something like that, because Dover was pretty small from what I remember.
Yeah, it is. I suppose they used Dover historically because if you're coming in from the States and you're flying into Heathrow or Gatwick, then it's a 2-hour drive down to Dover, something like that. So it's quite convenient for the Americans flying in, where some of the other ports not so much, I suppose.
So you ended up booking one of these cruises. So why don't you tell us about your thought process and why you decided to go on the cruise and do this sort of staycation, newly branded version of Disney Cruise Line?
Well, honestly, when Disney first announced these staycation cruises, we really weren't very excited by them. In fact, I even messaged Steve saying pretty much that, Steve. Yeah. And there's a few reasons behind that. Firstly, we love our port excursions. And obviously there aren't any of those. We're just going to float around on the sea for a couple of days and then come back. Secondly, as you know, Steve, very well, we're one of those families that gets involved with many of the activities which normally happen on the ship. We love our game shows. We like to do quizzes, even though we're terrible and we've never won one. We like to do drawing classes, pretty much anything, in fact, that's happening on the ship. And we weren't sure of how much of that would be actually happening on this type of cruise. And we're still not really. That's very unclear. And then, of course, there's the whole COVID element. We understand the need to wear masks. We understand that we need to be safe and be tested and whatever else we need to do. But we just thought that all of that might detract from the cruise. I suppose it's the debate of whether half a cruise is better than no cruise or not. So we were very unsure to start with as to whether this would be our sort of thing or not.
But in the end, you decided to go for it. So how did you make that decision?
We did. And honestly, the main reason is this, and this may come across as the craziest reason ever, but this is it. We've been on 4 Disney cruises, so we're 1 cruise away from being gold. And in 2022, we've already booked back-to-back sailings on the Magic. So we've booked an 11-night to Iceland. So the one we've missed out on during COVID, followed immediately by a 7-night Northern Europe cruise. So we're desperate to be gold in time for that, so that on the 11th night we can go to the special behind the scenes things that they usually have on the longer cruises. We decided in the end that it's worth doing one of the staycation cruises just for that reason, so that we can get to gold. Plus, we love DCL, we love cruising, and in the end, we couldn't resist. So we're booked on a 3-night cruise out of Liverpool, departing on the 30th of July.
Well, that's pretty exciting. And Chris, I mean, have you ever heard of somebody that's like booked a bunch of cruises so they could get to the next level of the Castaway Club?
No, definitely not me. John, for context, I had 2 cruises booked to get to the next level. In fact, one of those cruises was a 2-night, which, excuse me, why? But I booked it because it was going to be back to back, and it would have made my 5-night and 2-night combined to like a week-long cruise down to Mexico. But then COVID happened. So I would have also been chasing that gold just like you.
I think Steve did it as well, didn't you, Steve? Did you not do a San Diego just to get to platinum?
We're still gold, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we did that San Diego to get to gold, so that when we went to the Mediterranean, we were able to book the excursions that we wanted to book, or at least be a little bit further and ahead of the line. So, and as you find out with some of those cruises, anyways, there's still like tons of platinum people on it. But I think that you're going to be surprised how much easier it is to book once you're gold, as far as wanting to get the cabins you want, and you can pretty much get on any cruise you want to, with the exceptions of like the Wish. I'm sure is going to be very tough.
Yeah, and you still won't be able to get a cabana at Castaway.
Well, John and his family have only been over there once, so I got a question about that eventually when we get back to it. I know we've talked about it before, but your 2022 plans sound pretty amazing, John. And good for you for getting back on board. I'm sure a lot of it is just like the rest of us. You've been locked up, not traveling, not doing a whole lot. So what else has Disney been able to tell you about the cruise so far when you talk to them?
Okay, well, some of this information is emerging. I've no doubt that over the next few weeks, it's 90 days, just under 90 days till we sail. A whole heap of information's still going to come out to us. But let's talk about what we know so far. Let's do some COVID bits. So most importantly, anyone who's over 18 will have to have received both doses of the COVID vaccination. And that, for us in England, that's not as easy as it might sound. Here, we're having 2 doses of the vaccination with a gap of around 11 to 12 weeks between each one, which is much longer, I think, than the gap you guys are having in the States, aren't they? I know you've had both of yours, haven't you, Steve, with a gap of a couple of weeks, I think, perhaps. So, but here it's 11 to 12 weeks between those 2 doses. For me, that means I had my first vaccination on the 24th of March and booked in for the second one on the 11th of June. However, we're still only giving first vaccinations to people who are over 40. So anyone under the age of 40 is really unlikely to have been fully vaccinated before the end of July at the very earliest. Obviously, if you're clinically vulnerable or you're a frontline health worker, the schedule's different and you've probably had both of your jabs already. But what it means is that for most people under the age of 40, the earlier cruises in the schedule, so the ones out of Liverpool for sure, they won't be accessible. You won't be able to go on those cruises. So that's complicated enough to start with. For children under the age of 18 who won't have had their vaccination, you have to have a PCR test, which you've got to organise yourself, pay for yourself, that you have to do between 5 days and 24 hours prior to departure. And obviously that's got to come back negative. Then at the port itself, all of the party, adults and kids, will have to take a rapid lateral flow test, which again must be negative. There's going to be a temperature check too, and you must be under 38 degrees C or you're not getting on board. So there's a whole heap of COVID hoops that anybody who wants to sail is going to have to jump through before any of us get on board. So that's the COVID bit so far.
Honestly, that stuff would make me feel more comfortable booking this. I mean, I don't know about how you all felt, but I had been worried that Disney might be like, it's too crunchy of a topic to try to say everyone has to get vaccinated, because we know there's different opinions about that out there and things like that. But for now, they're saying you need to be vaccinated if you're able to be vaccinated, aka over the age of 18. And we're also going to test everybody the literal day right before they get onto the ship. Now, rapid tests are not 100% accurate, which is, of course, why Disney is requiring 2 for people who test positive, because you could get a false positive. But it would give me a lot of peace of mind, I think, going on to the ship, knowing that all these precautions were taken.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the States, because my understanding is that that vaccination piece, so to say you've got to be fully vaccinated before you can come on board, that's not a Disney ruling. That's a UK government ruling. So anybody who goes on a cruise this summer with any cruise line out of the UK will have to have been fully vaccinated. So I don't think that's necessarily Disney who've made that call.
Right. Well, and as you probably know, looking at international news, the vaccine has been very polarizing in the States. And there are some folks who love Disney Cruise Line, but probably wouldn't want to be vaccinated. So that can be challenging. Interesting stuff you're saying, too, about I didn't know that they had expanded it to being like 3 months later that you would get your second dose. Because here in the States, it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on whether you got Pfizer or Moderna. So Steve and I are actually both fully vaccinated now. Too bad we don't live in the UK.
No. So, there's a lot of people on the Facebook groups claiming it's really unfair against, guys in their 30s with young kids. So a very typical Disney demographic.
Right.
But that's, that's just where we are. And I'm pretty confident the ships the cruises will sell out. The demand is out there.
So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here with this, but to put it back into context, like Chris said, if you do if somebody in your party does test positive at the port, then you get moved into a separate facility, I believe is what I read. They test you a second time. If that person tests positive again, then the entire party is not allowed to board. But if you test negative at that time, then everybody can go on board. John, so you're a member of a Facebook group. Is there a British Disney Cruise Line or maybe a European Disney Cruise Line Facebook group that you're part of? Do you have any idea? Do you have any sense of how many people in England sail with Disney Cruise Line? I mean, I know there's a big Disney fan base in England. I was just curious.
So somebody set up a Facebook group a few weeks ago for the staycation cruises. So a kind of catch-all before we knew exactly how many there were going to be. And then, of course, now people are booking on individual cruises. We're starting to get individual Facebook groups for each sailing set up as well. And I think the main one's got maybe 1,000, something like 1,000 members in it at the moment. So if you multiplied that by family members, that's 3,000 or 4,000 people, I suppose. So I think it's pretty popular. We've both been on DCL cruises in Europe, and it's still 80% Americans on the cruises. So I guess Brits is with a second category, probably a DCL fans, aren't we? I guess behind Americans. But as I said, I think these will be hugely popular, and the Disney are making quite a big thing about it. So there are TV adverts running, and at Disney, I don't think DCL have ever advertised cruising on British television. There's adverts for Walt Disney World all the time, but I've never seen a DCL cruise. There's adverts on the telly now. So DCL are making quite a big thing of this, and I think it'll be hugely popular, massively in demand.
So once you guys get on board, was there any more information as far as safety precautions on board, John?
Yep. So I think to Chris's point about it would make you feel safer, I completely agree with that. I think the Disney Magic this summer will be one of the very safest places you could possibly be, quite honestly. So once on board, we're going to have daily temperature checks every day, apparently as we arrive at lunch. And then if your temperature is over 38, they'll send you off down to the medical centre for further testing. We're going to have to fill in a daily health questionnaire via the app, I presume saying that we all feel fit and well. Other things to keep us safe. The ships are going to sail with reduced capacity to help with social distancing. It's not quite clear what reduced capacity means. And when I booked, the call handler didn't know. We think it might be 50% of normal capacity or 1,000 passengers, whichever is the lower. So I think the magic full capacity is about 2,700, isn't it? If every stateroom was fully booked out. So I guess there'll be about 1,000 passengers on board is my guess. Face coverings for anyone aged 11 and up are going to be mandatory at all times, except when dining, swimming, or sitting alone in your cabin, or sitting in your family group in your cabin.
I found we've gone along, even with our kids, the face coverings aren't that big of a deal. If we make it a big deal, then it's a big deal to them, but our kids have been pretty fine with it. How's your family been with, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I guess, if you haven't been wearing face coverings and then all of a sudden you're there for 4 days, you might want to plan ahead on that. But how has it been for you guys over in England, John?
So the kids are having to wear face coverings in school at the moment. So actually in class every day. So they're wearing face coverings all day, every day during school time. It doesn't bother me. I'm very used to it. Caroline's slightly asthmatic, so she finds it slightly more challenging to wear a face covering. But, we understand and we'll be fully compliant, of course.
Perfect.
So you mentioned no face coverings during dining. And the number one question I think we get asked about COVID and food is the buffet. And what's that going to look like? So can you fill us in on any details you know about dining?
I can try. We know a bit, but I'm not sure we know much. We know for definite, and this is no great surprise, self-service buffets are, quote Disney, paused. We don't know what that means for cabanas, and I've failed to get an answer out of the call handlers on this, other than we think we know that cabanas is going to be open, but it's unclear as to whether open means table service or whether it means served buffet. We don't know at this time. Our guess is that it's going to be table service, so no buffets at all. Having said that, quick service locations are still going to be open throughout. So all those quick service locations around the pool are going to be open, so that's good. Dinner will obviously be in family groups, so no sharing of tables with other families. And I think we'll be able to get paper menus if we really need them, but they're going to encourage us to use the digital menus on the app. Parlo's operating normally, so Parlo will be open for brunch and for dinner. But our assumption at this stage is that all meals, breakfast, lunch and dinner, will basically be fully served at table. That's our working assumption as we sit here today.
When you booked your cruise, did you have to pick a dining time? Did they have that specified?
We did. So it's main dining and late dining as we're all used to.
Okay,
pick whichever suits your family.
So that sounds like it's going to be the same, and just smaller groups, obviously, because less people sailing. So, Chris, any more questions on dining?
No, I mean, if you do the math in your head and there's only 1,000 people on board and you split those 1,000 amongst two dinings, that's really only accommodating 500 people per meal, which probably means that they can physically distance tables in the dining rooms, and it probably is the only version of fully table served meals that Disney could accommodate, because if the ship were full, I don't think they'd have enough staff to be able to handle 3 square meals a day that are all served tableside where you order from a menu. So I feel like this is a very temporary solution that will just sort of happen for these sailings, or sailings where the capacity is so drastically reduced that they can accommodate that.
Let's move on to entertainment. We'll just kind of jump through all these subjects as we kind of go along. What about entertainment? Any thoughts on entertainment? Did they talk about, John?
So they did. On the 2 and 3 day cruises, there's going to be one main theatre show, which is performed throughout. And they've said that's going to be Disney Dreams. But there's going to be a pre-show from Mickey and Friends, which I guess is just going to be Mickey and Friends coming on and dancing around and doing that normal entertainment they do at Sail Away or something like that. So just one show. The show has to be pre-booked, so you can't just turn up whenever you want. And that pre-booking is going to open up 30 days prior to the cruise. What's not clear is how many showings there's going to be. We don't know if it'll just be, if you're on main seating dining, you'll go to the show after, and if you're on late seating, you'll go to the show before, or whether they might do some matinee afternoon shows as well. We don't. That's not clear at this stage. But you're going to have to pre-book 30 days in advance. We don't know whether if you wanted to go more than once, whether you can book multiple times, but we're assuming not. We're assuming you can only just book one slot. And then those 4-night cruises, so those 3 4-night cruises, Disney have said there's going to be an additional variety show, as yet undefined. So no idea what that's going to be, whether they're going to ship a magician on board or whether they're just going to have the guys that perform Disney Dreams doing something else. That's just not clear.
Maybe it'll be the crew showing all their hidden talents.
Maybe it will, yes, a bit of magic acts. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, I know that you and your family are big in quiz shows, also, just taking part in the family entertainment up at, why can I say it now? Holy cow, the D Lounge and whatnot. John, I think I remember seeing a picture of you with I'm losing
a medal, Steve. That's what you mean. You mean a medal?
Yeah, I remember seeing a picture with you in the medals, but more I was thinking about the pirate one when you had the seagull on your head. So I know that.
I think I had a bucket on my head, but it was equally attractive.
Yeah. Anyways, so I know you and your family enjoy doing those. Any thoughts or information on those type of entertainment happening?
So it was a big question for us, and it's a question lots of people are asking on the Facebook groups. And I guess this is a bit of an aside, but there's no doubt there's going to be a huge amount of first timers sailing this summer, people who've never been on a Disney cruise before. And lots of people are asking, well, what is there to do on the ship? What do you do? And onboard activity is, I guess it's one of those podcasts, isn't it? In a way, the answer is we don't really know. We know some things, but we don't know very much. So game shows, quizzes, art classes, we have no idea whether any of those are going to be happening, and if so, in what format. All they've said on the website is they've made reference to a new game show, which they say is going to be with the Toy Story crowd, so Woody and Friends, in a hunt around the ship for, quote, the elusive blue crayon. So it's obviously going to be a treasure hunt. And let's hope it's not as lame as, frankly, that sounds. Let's hope they've come up with something that's a bit more imaginative and innovative than that. So onboard activity, really daytime entertainment. There's going to be some sort of treasure hunt, but beyond that, no idea. They've said character meet and greets won't be taking place as we've always known them. So you're not going to be going up and giving Mickey a hug and doing close-up photos and autographs. They've said there will be innovative character experiences. And frankly, I think that'll just be Mickey and the other characters waving at us from the balconies. I'm not really sure what else they can do with that. Yeah, we don't really know any more than that at the moment.
They did talk about being able to go to Wakanda and some things like that. So I'm curious if they will blend that into either, I'm not sure if they'll make it a full nighttime show up on the top deck, but maybe some different experiences like that, where I would hope it would be more than just, hey, go to Wakanda, here's the Black Panther. Hopefully they'll be a little bit more creative and maybe put a show together in the lobby or whatever else for people for some different experiences. But sure. I'm sure there will be a lot to do. I can't imagine that they're going to put all of you guys on board for 4 days with nothing going on. So how about the pool deck?
I'm really hopeful about the pool because, as we all know, the pools on Disney ships are not massive, and it does tend to be kid soup if the sun's shining and it's a nice day. So for this, the swimming pools are going to be bookable only. So they're going to limit the numbers via a booking system. And the way you're going to have to do it is there's going to be some sort of virtual queue that you join on the app once you're on board. So I guess if you decide you want to swim, you join the queue, and then they'll message you when it's your turn to come. Whether that'll turn out to be 10 minutes or 4 hours, who knows? It's just going to be based on demand, I guess. But the fact that it's going to be limited numbers means it might actually be a much more pleasurable experience than it is sometimes on a Disney ship normally. They're saying the aqueduct will be open. They're going to do socially distanced queuing. That doesn't sound easy, honestly. So let's see whether that really happens. But that's what they're saying at the moment. So I'm hopeful about the pool. I think the pool, if you can get a slot and the sun's shining, could be fun.
It's interesting because this is starting to sound more and more like a Disney World vacation where you have to plan everything out and book everything in advance. And there isn't a lot of spontaneity offered you, if you want to see and do everything at Disney World. And I think one of the draws of a Disney cruise is that almost nothing was planned. Excursions are planned, sure, but when you're on the ship, it's like you wake up in the morning and you see the 40 things they're offering that day, and you go and pick one of those 40 things, and you can throw the kids in the kids club whenever you want, and you can book a last minute spa reservation and things like that. And I think a lot of that will be going away. It's a little interesting. If you have to book the pool, what are they doing about kids clubs? How is that going to work?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question because we kind of assumed that kids clubs would be a problem as well. You know, you don't want 80 kids all running around mixing. You are going to have to be organized with kids clubs. So the nursery is going to be closed completely. So if you've got very, very small children, you're just going to have to look after them yourself. For the club and the lab, so kids 4 to 12, I think the club and the lab are, aren't they? You're going to have to register your child as part of the online check-in process. So you can't do that once you're on board. But you're then going to have to be really organized in that you're going to have to reserve specific session times prior to departure. And what you get is, on embarkation day, you get 90 minutes. And then on the sea days, you get 2.5 hours. So it sounds as if what you just described, Chris. So, I fancy going to pop up to the Cove Cafe and just have a coffee and sit by the adult pool for an hour. So I'll go and dump my kid at the kids club. I don't think that's going to be happening.
Right.
They have said that slots might be available on board subject to availability, but basically they're asking you to pick your slots in advance. So honestly, for our family, we won't do it because it's just going to be too rigid. So we won't bother with any of that. And once we're on board, if James wants to go to a kids club and there's a slot available, then, he can go. But other than that, then we won't bother. I think they're going to try and keep the groups in the club and the lab to a maximum of 15. So they're going to have a counsellor looking after groups of up to 15 max at a time doing something. Edge and Vibe, don't know. I think they're going to be much looser with Edge and Vibe. They're definitely going to be open. And I think they'll just trust the teenagers to be sensible, probably. And if it looks like it's getting busy in the actual space, then they'll just shut the doors and say we're full, is my guess.
It'll be interesting to get your guys' feedback when you get back, John, as far as, how flexible or, whether there were slots that opened up at the shows, people that decided to decline it. I hope that they have that option on the app as well, as like, hey, we've got this 5 p.m. show booked. I'm going to decline it now because we're not feeling up for it. We're going to go, get some food up on top deck or something like that. And then that opens up slots for people, whether it's entertainment, the kids clubs or whatever else. It'll be interesting to see how it all works.
Yeah, it will. I think it's only 90 days away. It's going to be fascinating to talk about how it really panned out, I think.
Makes you really hope that they've invested in the app during this time away from sailing, because relying on an app on the ship where sometimes, Wi-Fi is not good and sometimes you don't get a notification about something till, an hour after you received the message and things like that, I think now would have been a great time to mega invest in technology on the ship, because the more scheduled out we are, the more we're going to be glued to our phones and relying on that.
So Chris and I love getting up early in the morning and working out at the gym. Any word on the gym there, John?
Good news on the gym. The gym is going to be open, unlike the spa. So the spa is not going to be open at all. We understand spa is just closed. The gym will be open. Unsurprisingly, you're going to have to be organized. You're going to have to book in advance of the cruise, and you have an allocation of 45-minute session per day. Again, if there's availability on board, you might be able to book a slot, they're saying. So you can go to the gym, Steve, but you're going to have to be organized if you want to do it.
I could fit that in at that 6 a.m. slot. So,
well, I'm happy to hear about the gym. In the States, gyms have been closed a lot and difficult to go to, depending on the state you're in. I feel like lots of people have had to learn new and exciting ways to be physically active. So I'd be excited to get to spend some time in the gym. Is there anything else that maybe about shopping or other sorts of venues around the ship that we are used to being able to just pop into whenever we want?
There's a few bits and pieces. The shops will still be open, which I guess is not surprising, as Disney still want you to spend your money. Uh-huh. And I guess they'll just control capacity manually. I guess they'll have people on the doors and they'll say, can you wait 5 minutes because we're busy right now. So shops are open. The table tennis and shuffleboard are both going to be closed off, and they've turned the basketball court into an additional sun deck. Steve, you mentioned a Marvel themed entertainment event. So as you say, they've announced they're going to do something around Marvel. We don't really know what. And they've also said there's going to be a Freeze the Night Away event, so the Frozen event. And those are normally evening events on the deck, aren't they, on the pool deck? But I'm sure they won't want a crowd of 1,000 people all congregating up on the pool deck to watch an event. So how they're going to do it, I don't know. But they're obviously going to try and plan those types of event in a new way. So we'll just have to see.
They never specifically said there would be fireworks.
There are never fireworks in Europe on European cruises. Pretty much.
Interesting. Fun
so
fact.
There absolutely
no,
there absolutely won't be fireworks.
The funny thing is that Freeze the Night Away party is an Alaskan thing because you also cannot have fireworks in Alaska. And they synergize that with the Frozen show on the Wonder. And we're like, don't worry, we'll just have a Frozen night party where we blast, whatever smoke in the air when Elsa uses her magic. So I guess it's quick to just bring that onto the ship because it's something that already existed before.
Yeah, but how to do it in a socially distanced way
is the trick.
That's the challenge for them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty excited for you guys to be able to go on this cruise, John. I know that a lot of our listeners would trade places with you in a heartbeat to get back out and experience a little bit of normalcy, quote unquote normalcy. But how did the pricing work out for it? How did it compare to some of the other cruises you've booked in the past?
Okay, well, this is a big well followed by a long pause. It's really expensive and honestly far more expensive than we had anticipated. And my guess is that Disney are betting on huge demand from people just because none of us have been on a vacation since 2019. Really, if you're in England, you haven't had an opportunity to go on a vacation. Nobody went abroad in 2020, so people have stayed at home. So I think Disney are banking on pent up demand. I think they're guessing that people will view this as a safe option for having a vacation compared to some other things. So, for example, the 7-night Northern Europe cruise that we've booked in 2022 is roughly £1,000 sterling per night for a family of 4 in a deluxe family ocean view stateroom with veranda. So £1,000 a night. On this cruise, with all of the restrictions, uncertainty about the entertainment on board, no port stops, we're paying pretty much exactly the same rate. So I guess that proves Disney's point. It doesn't really make sense in some respects. It's maybe not great value for money compared to what we're used to. It may even turn out not to be a lot of fun. But for us, so desperate are we to get back on a Disney ship that we booked anyway.
What's interesting about everything that you're saying too is I think you're right that the demand is there. And I also think that Disney has to make it worth it to reduce the capacity of the ship so greatly. If you think about a normal Disney cruise, you have folks who are paying significantly less to be in an inside stateroom or something like that. But you're spreading the cost of operations amongst so many cabins. And when you reduce that by half, there's probably some operational argument there too. I can't even imagine what a operating in the red looks like over the past year for Disney Cruise Line because they have had to keep some crew on all the ships. They've had to pay port fees and docking fees and all the fuel to travel all over the oceans. And they're footing a $1 billion check to build the Wish. So Disney Cruise Line is operating at a net loss to the company for probably many years to come right now. And so I could see them saying from a financial argument, the demand, yes, it might be there, but also we have to charge this much because of the capacity issues. So it's definitely not as user-friendly or like guest-friendly of an experience. And it will probably create a place where a lot of people who would have gone on a Disney cruise just can't afford it anymore. And the cruise line was already so expensive. So it's interesting to think about the ramifications for something like this as we reopen. And I guess we'll learn more once they start actually sailing all 4 ships.
Yeah, we will. But I think it'll work for Disney. I think I think all the cruises will pretty much sell out. The very last ones, when the kids are back to school, might be a bit of a more difficult sell. But I think they'll sell out whatever the capacity is, because I just think the demand is out there.
And those last ones will time with more British folks getting vaccinated. So
yeah, exactly.
So they can start filling capacity with adults that don't have kids.
Exactly.
What'll be interesting a little bit too is how Disney Cruise Line compares to as Walt Disney World opened up. Myself and the kids went last summer to Disney World, and I think it's been generally, Chris, I know Disneyland just opened this week, a positive experience for most people, even though not everything is available. And obviously in the cruise line here, not everything's going to be available, but I think for the most part, people going back, the fans have been happy with what they've gotten. And my hope is that Disney Cruise Line provides that for you and your family too, John.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'd be remiss as we kind of finish up, or before we finish up, that there was a pretty big announcement last week. I'm assuming that you guys got to watch that 30-minute video, the Disney Wish. And I was kind of curious what your thoughts and maybe your family's thoughts are on the new ship and how it compares with, as you and I are kind of we're on the old ships all the time. We're on the Magic for the most part. So what are your thoughts, John?
Okay, well, you guys did a great show last week. Let me just say that. So the show you guys did with the DCL Duo was just a great show. So thanks for putting that together. Look, it's a Disney ship, so it's going to be great, isn't it? Do any of us think it's not going to be absolutely fantastic? It will. I think the Aquamouse looks like a really exciting innovation. I'd love to go on it. Whether I ever will, I don't know, but I think it looks great. I'm excited by the restaurants. I think you have to move on. I think the Frozen restaurant looks great, and that's going to be a new show because it's going to pick up where Frozen 2 leaves off. So I think that's going to be new and exciting, and the menu will be fine. I think people are worried about Nordic food. The menu will be fine, I'm sure of that. I think you have to appeal to the demographic of today. So I think a Marvel-themed restaurant fits the demographic. Christy might not like it, but she's not a teen. So I think for many of the kids that go on the ships, that'll be the single most exciting thing. I love the idea of the 1923 restaurant as a classic restaurant full of mementos of that golden era of Disney. I think that just looks great. I don't think if COVID's still around, it's going to be a problem, because me personally, and I think many others, will just want to wander around looking at all the stuff that's on display rather than sitting at the table that I've been assigned. I'm excited by the restaurants. You've said loads of times, Chris, you'd love to see a Polynesian restaurant or a Mexican restaurant. And I'm with you. That would be incredible. And I'm sure Disney will do that. But I think for the Wish, they are moving it on, and they think they're moving it on in a positive way. What else? The staterooms look beautiful. So it'll be great. It'll be a beautiful ship. Whether I'll ever get to come back across and go on it, I don't know, but I'd love to.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with everything you just said. But that I have always felt that the way for Disney Cruise Line to sort of make up for the operational challenges and food quality challenges of feeding thousands of people at one time has been environment and making a compelling place to have dinner. Also, it makes a lot of sense to me why they put all their eggs in the Marvel basket and not the Star Wars basket, right? They created a hyperspace bar, which is cool, but they didn't make a Star Wars restaurant. And I think one of the reasons is because Star Wars has been the fans of Star Wars have been really critical of Galaxy's Edge and some of the more recent movies and things like that. I happen to love all of those things, but Marvel, the fans have just been literally loving everything. WandaVision and, Avengers Endgame and, all the new sort of storytelling that's coming out around Marvel. I just think that it is a more sure bet for Disney.
I think that's right.
Now.
There are so many characters and so many places that Disney can take the MCU.
Yep.
You haven't really got that opportunity in Star Wars. And if I'm honest, Star Wars is a bit of an older demographic anyway, isn't it? It's to a point, it's you and me, Steve, who saw the original in 1977. So Marvel just feels more current, and it has more light. It has more longevity in it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So it'll be great. I think it's a great addition. Also, When these ships were originally announced, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but because I'm thinking back to D23, but did they not say 2021, 2022, and 2023? So they were planning to release these year after year, 3 ships right in a row. Obviously, we're not getting the Wish till 22. They haven't even announced. I'm trying to think of some Disney word to make up for what the new ship will be.
Imagine.
But,
Go with
the imagination or, whatever. But they haven't even announced the next 2 ships, though Disney is still saying they're going to build them. So I don't think we're getting a ship year after year after year just because of the backup at Meyer Werft and all of the things that are going on in the cruise industry more broadly. So they've got some time to Imagineer some new restaurants for us, and they've got some time to give us what we're looking for. So I'm pretty hopeful in the future of Disney Cruise Line, but I don't know about you. It sounds like you're feeling the same.
Yeah, I am. You'll get your Coco restaurant eventually. You will get
it.
Well, John, as we kind of finish up today, thanks so much for coming back on. But I want to give you the floor one more time. Is there anything else kind of in your guys' thoughts around the Disney Cruise Line, visiting Disney World, the cruise industry in general? Anything else, I should say? Any kind of final thoughts?
No, I think we're in a transition period, aren't we? We're entering a new way of living, and a new way of cruising is going to be a part of that. So it's going to be fascinating to see both how Disney try to organize us when we're on board, and actually how we as humans react to that new environment, particularly those of us who are experienced cruisers. So this summer is going to be a really interesting experience, and I think there'll be a lot to talk about once it's happened. We've booked 18 nights in 2022 already, so I'm just really hoping that by the time we get to the summer of 2022, we're back to something that looks like how we cruised in 2017, 2018, 2019. I'm really hopeful.
Well, our next cruise is booked in November. So if you guys could just figure it all out this summer for us so that it's all going to be straightened out, so that when we get on the Magic in November, it'll just smooth sailing. It'll be smooth sailing.
We'll do our best, and we'll all write to the CDC straight afterwards.
Perfect. Chris, any final thoughts before we get out of here tonight?
Well, 1, I'm still really excited to meet John. And 2, I am jealous and excited to hear sort of what this process is like. It's a new product that Disney probably didn't want to have to make, but they made it because it's the only option. So we'll see if they can make lemonade out of these lemons, and you all can have a really fun time together as a family. So I can't wait for the follow-up episode in July.
Once again, John, I know we'll be in touch before you guys set sail in July, but all the best to you and your family as we kind of move into the summer. Have a great time over there. Just enjoy the time that you guys have together. And we look forward to bringing you back on and hearing all about your sailing on the Disney Magic in July out of Liverpool.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Chris. It's been fun.
Cheers. Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank John for coming on and sharing his and his family's experiences as they booked sailing on the Disney Magic out of the UK this summer. I know a lot of you out there, along with our family, would love to be joining them and getting back on the ships. As we talked about, some of the stuff is stuff that we know for sure. Some of it's been a little speculated through the Facebook groups that John has been a part of. So we look forward to hearing back from him at the end of July, beginning of August, when they get done with their sailing. And if anybody else out there is going to be sailing in the UK this summer before that, or even after that, if you would like to come on and share your experiences, we sure would appreciate it. I know a lot of our listeners would love to hear from you. I know we've got a couple listeners also who have booked on Royal Caribbean and will be sailing this summer as well out of the Caribbean. And if anybody else is out there is going to be on either Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, or Celebrity this summer and would like to come on and share your experiences, we'd love to have you on, just so that everybody gets kind of all our listeners get kind of an idea of what to expect when the Disney ships start sailing, either out of Port Canaveral, Miami, or wherever they begin out of the Caribbean once it starts. Well, if you're enjoying the show, we sure would appreciate it if you would share it with others. You can do that by giving an iTunes review for us. That helps us get the word out to other prospective listeners in the cruising and the Disney community. Also, word of mouth also really helps too. So if you know somebody else who would enjoy our show, we sure would appreciate it if you would pass it along as well. If you'd like to support our show, you can do so through our Patreon program. You can go over to patreon.com/DCL podcast and find out all the information there. We thank each and every one of you each month, because they're the ones that help bring this show to you each month. It helps defer the costs. And on behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, and Chris, we really want to thank each and every one of you who've signed up to do that. If you're looking for a travel agent, you can go over to packyourpixiedust.com and find out That's Christy's travel site, and you can find out all the information of getting in hold with her there. She can help you out with not only any Disney travel related adventure, but also she's really proficient with Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, Celebrity, and also a lot of the different resorts down in the Caribbean, Mexico, and everything else that you can book as well, sandals, etc. Well, between now and our next show, if you and your family are heading out on a staycation, a vacation, or just kind of hanging around the house, getting that spring cleaning done, on behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, and Chris, all of us here at the DCL Podcast, we want to thank you for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.